This is Dr. Thomas Klein. I am a rare and chronic disease specialist from Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm coming to you to talk to you about what we can do next. Before we do that, I have a correction to make from a previous thing. I mentioned low back pain. Now, low back pain is a pejorative term. That means it carries a connotation. People think that low back pain is related to job injuries. Matter of fact, this whole mess started in the state of Washington when a lot of the prop members, remember them? Prop physicians for opioid, Jane Ballantyne, director. She's the one that says we really shouldn't be using pain medicines for chronic pain. There are 10 million people in the United States with rare painful diseases, and she thinks we shouldn't be doing that. These people heavily influenced the CDC regulations. Here's a list of core experts. Now, what the CDC did, it's very hard to read their guideline, but we've been studying it for months at JAF. And what we're coming to the conclusion is it is a paper that's opinion. They say they have no evidence. Remember this, no study evaluated the PDMP, pill counts, contracts, drug testing. No study evaluated the effectiveness, but yet they pushed it into use. Anyway, these are the core members, and we picked out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 prop members or people that have signed prop petitions. So there were 9 people on the core expert group members who were asked to make the CDC guidelines. So the CDC guidelines, which are unauthorized, involuntary, people sat around the table, and this is an opinion piece. This is an opinion guideline from the CDC, an important government agency that's the one who's behind the complete destruction of treatment of pain in the United States. And I know that for sure because of what my patients are going through trying to find doctors and pharmacies. Treatment of pain in the United States is dead. If you can remember the last horrible, painful episode you had, imagine it lasting 3 or 4 days, and then finally you go to your doctor and he says, "Oh, I can't lose my license. You'll have to take Tylenol." So here's a little news story. Here's an older solo practitioner, which seemed to be the target of a lot of this. He's at the Sonoma Valley Hospital. Sonoma Valley in California. He got sacked because he had a 14-page agreement with the hospital, and apparently they were upset about how much medicine he was prescribing for people in pain, claiming he overprescribed dangerous drugs. First of all, these are not dangerous drugs. They're very safe drugs. They do cause addiction in less than 1%, but you can deal with that with the famous question, you ever had an opiate before? Overprescribed? The the FDA, has no upper limits or amounts on prescription opiates. So where are they getting that? Overprescribed. Sounds like something else was going on. He was escorted out of his clinic like a criminal at IBM, Sonoma Valley. He was not allowed to access any of his files or a chance to talk to his patients before he was marched out of the building. This guy's in his 80s, been practicing since 1960. They claimed he didn't adhere to their guideline for narcotic prescribing. Where did they get that? Did they get that from the CDC? Well, you know the CDC. Did he get that from this? Oh, according to the CDC, anyone who takes prescription opioids can become addicted. That's not true. Less than 1% can become addicted. This is what the hospital's telling him to get rid of him. As many as 1 in 4 patients receiving long-term therapy struggles with opioid addiction. If that many people had opioid addiction, half the people in the country would be out shooting up behind dumpsters. That's not true. According to the guidelines, it says, once addicted, it can be hard to stop. That's true. More than 11 million people reported misusing prescriptions. That's the survey they did, and they said, you ever take this medicine like it says on the bottle? Of course. People take pain medicines on a varying schedule depending on their pain. Taking too many of these drugs can lead to death. That's not true. Again, we're talking about percentages. These are the people who take prescription drugs who die. These are the people in the streets, which the government is doing nothing about. Okay, so much for poor Dr. Schaefer, who we support strongly at our group because he's a fine, upstanding citizen in our medical community, and he sounds like, from what we just read, Okay, we're going to gather a few facts before we get on to the topic at hand. We need to talk about the opioid crisis. We have some graphs we're going to show you next time. The opioid crisis is a crisis, and it's been a crisis since 1970. We have graphs from the National Institutes of Health to show a steadily rising number of death rates every single year. So they say we've had more deaths this year than we've ever had before. Well, that's what happens when you have a graph like this. I'm the oldest this year than I've ever been. Same logic. So that's the crisis. We've always had it, and we have it because we refuse to treat people with opiate addiction, type 2, that we've talked about before. Opiate addiction is rare, less than 1%. It's a real disease. It is not from too much medicine, which CDC is wrong about. It's from having your genes triggered. Other addictions? Yes. Now, the opioid epidemic. So there's two things, crisis and epidemic. Epidemic has to do with numbers. Epidemic is a rapidly rising number endangering a lot of people. This is the number from CDC. This is the increase each year in the deaths from opiates. Prescription opiates? No, because we know that prescription opiates are only involved this much, 2%. Remember the article in Newsweek? 2%. So these are the numbers. You decide yourself. If one person more dies per year, is that an epidemic? And who is dying? Again, the CDC is covering up the fact that 95% of people who die are dying in the streets because they are not being treated. All right. The things that are currently being used to hang doctors and pharmacies, high-dose opioids. Okay, we know that's not true. FDA says you can use as much as you want. Out-of-town patients. That's from 10 years ago when everybody failed to close down the pill mill in Florida, which was a real criminal enterprise. Out of town. California won't accept any out-of-state prescriptions. See, we're just closing this whole system down. Used to be you get a prescription in the United States anywhere you want. Early refills. Coming in early. A lot of people come in early when they need more medicine. Paying by cash. Now that's interesting. Insurance companies won't take. Doctors won't take because the insurance companies won't pay the doctors. So cash. That's a sign that you're a dope fiend. All right, the topic for today is what to do. And we're going to talk about what to do about pharmacies. First of all, I would be happy to receive any feedback about what's happening to pharmacies because we want to develop a national strategy. But basically, this is what you can do to go to your local legislator at the state level. Sit down with them and say, we got a problem. And the problem is having our prescriptions filled. Doctor writes us a prescription, we expect it to be filled. And it's not. People are saying, well, we don't have any. The pharmacists are saying, we're just not going to fill it, like we talked about yesterday. We're just not going to fill it. I feel uncomfortable filling this. That's a professional saying, I feel uncomfortable. Suppose somebody came to me for an operation on their gallbladder, and I said, well, I'm uncomfortable with that. That is not a professional reason not to fill a doctor's prescription. The other problem is that it appears that there's not enough opiates. Appears to be enough of everything else, just not enough opiates. So you can sit down with your legislators, and start to talk about these things. And next time we will gather information. You send me stuff on Twitter, or you can email me, thomaskleinmd@gmail.com, and we will assemble all these things so you can sit down with your legislators, and we're going to start doing something. And we're going to start filing complaints, and we're going to start adding up data. Thank you. Good evening.